This video will provide you with instructions on how to proceed with the brown bag speech. This speech is worth 20 points, and there is a time limit. You want to speak for at least 2 minutes, no longer than 4, and that is your responsibility as a speaker to stay within those parameters. So as you are practicing multiple times out loud, standing up, you should be timing yourself to make sure you're consistently hitting under 4 minutes. The time is part of the overall grade. So when we get to the grading breakdown, we'll explain that. But if speeches go significantly over time, I will just cut them off at a certain point, which means you won't get points for the content after that. Again, those would need to be extremely long. We're talking 2 to 3 minutes over the maximum time at that point. But you do want to be very careful of that. So the brown bag speech, the topic is fortunately not about a brown bag. The topic is something you're much more familiar with, and that is yourself. Essentially, it is a self-introduction speech. And you're going to be telling us more about yourself through the use of 3 objects that represent your past, present, and future. The reason why it's called a brown bag speech is to give you an idea about how big the objects should be, the size of a brown paper grocery bag. Now, we are running things a little different since this is an online-only class. Normally, really tiny objects would be highly problematic in a large classroom setting because the people in the back simply wouldn't be able to see them. And we want to avoid passing objects around in that setting because it can be a distraction. In this case, you have the ability to bring a smaller item or even a photograph up close to the camera. So if that's the case, we can go ahead and do that for this particular speech. You just want to make sure, though, that the objects are visible, that your audience is able to see them. Bigger is absolutely no problem. I've had people bring quite large objects into class before. I've seen surfboards. I've seen a musician, he brought in his guitar and amp, and he even strummed a few bars and sang. So really the sky's the limit when it comes to how big the item is that you want to show us, and then of course how creative you would like to get with it. So some of the objectives. Of course, you're going to get more experience speaking. You are going to get to know each other, or at least your feedback partner if you choose not to watch other speeches. That will help you with future audience analysis. You're going to become more familiar with extemporaneous speaking, so no note cards for just this one speech. You're going to become more familiar with organization, and then of course staying within the time limit and using parts of the speech like introductions, transitions, and conclusions. Listed on this scoring sheet are examples of items you might want to use, past, present, and future, but really this is just a basic jumping off point. I love to see people get creative and wild with this. I've seen a lot of fun things, everything from themes that had to do with cereal, kids' cereals, to different uniforms that people have worn, currently wear, and want to wear. You can be highly symbolic with your objects. So have a lot of fun with it. This is the enjoyable part of the brown bag speech. You can be very creative. And the tone is also up to you. You can be quite funny and lighthearted. You can be more serious. I've had people choose to describe items in their past, things such as overcoming addiction or abuse that they wanted to share. They felt that was important to them. You do not have to go into that personal level if you don't feel comfortable with that, but you are welcome to if you would like. So let's see how these 20 points are broken down. Staying within the time limit, 3 points. I give you a cushion of about 20 or 30 seconds going over, which tends to be more of an issue rather than going under. About a 20 or 30 second buffer after 4 minutes. After that, every 30 seconds I start taking off a point, and at about 2 minutes over, I will just have to stop the speech. Next, speaking without an outline is 1 point. So simply using the objects as a guide. This is the only speech where you won't be using note cards, but I recommend writing something down to start with for your practice sessions. Build an outline, at least sketch something out so you know what you're going to say and when, and then as you start practicing out loud, wean yourself off of that outline. So that should be easier to do with something that is personal to you. The speech is where you are the focus. Next, I'll take the two together, a total of 3 objects and appropriate for the classroom setting. So do be sure to have 3 objects. Every once in a while, a speech will only have 1 or 2. So make sure you have at least 3 for past, present, and future. And make sure that we see them, especially again if they're a smaller item or if they tend to lie flat, like a shirt, a uniform, maybe a medal attached to a lanyard, something like that. I would recommend using a small table to put in front of you. You would stand in front of that and then lay all your objects on the table before you start recording. That way they're set up. You don't have to worry about holding them or putting them somewhere, pulling them out of a bag. That can get a little noisy or distracting. And that way it's all ready to go and you hit record and everything is set up as you want it arranged in front of you. If you use a table to do this, just avoid leaning on the table. It's there for the objects, not for the speaker to use as a crutch or a podium. And then incorporate the objects into your speech. Don't forget that they are there. You want to hold them up, show them to us, explain why they represent some aspect of your life. You don't have to hold them the entire time. Once you feel like you've shown them for enough, a few seconds, however long feels right, then you can set them back down on the table. Finally, 8 points are devoted to organization and content. I'll start with content. You want to be sure you're going into enough detail about yourself and letting us get to know who you are, a bit about your personality, where you came from, certain experiences that shaped you and made you who you are. Perhaps you encountered a certain person or a class, or there was an experience you had that completely changed you or was really moving. Talk about all that stuff, all that great stuff. You want to be sure this is a vivid speech where we get to know some part of your personality. And then organization. This is introducing you into the basic structure we will use for all of our speeches, which I will now turn to this little presentation to help us structure our brown bags. So a brown bag organization. All speeches have at their basic level 3 major components: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. You want to start building the body of your speech first in all cases, not just this initial speech. The body is the meat of any presentation. It is the longest. It has all of the content. And the other 2 parts, intro and conclusion, are dependent on what is in the body in order to be developed. The main points in the body of this first speech are built for you, past, present, and future. So you don't have to worry about making up your own main points just yet. Just what comes under them, the subpoints or supporting material, which is where the outline will come in handy. You'll want to sketch out what you will say about all of those items in terms of maybe short stories, examples, descriptions, all of that good stuff, and the order in which you'll say it. So once you feel like the body is good to go, your past, present, and future are all fleshed out, turn to the introduction. You want to develop that before the conclusion because the conclusion is really a snap to put together. In the introduction for this speech, I want to see 3 elements. First, you will open your speech with an attention getter. All speeches from here on out, whether you do them formally for this class or informally, should open with a dynamic hook. This will automatically get you to be seen as a more sophisticated speaker than somebody who opens with just a greeting and their name. I mean, let's face it, we hear that all the time, and it gets to be a bit dull. So shake things up, be a more interesting speaker, a more dynamic speaker, and come up with a hook that really gets us to want to pay attention to the rest of your speech. There are lots of approaches to an attention getter. For this particular assignment, you could go with anything from a question to your audience to maybe a song quote that is your favorite and you feel like describes you, a song lyric, maybe a quote from somebody you really admire or aspire to be like, or even a list of interesting but perhaps strange adjectives that you feel like describe who you are. Those are all options, and of course there are many more, so this is another area where you get to play with creativity. After that comes your thesis, which is telling us you're going to introduce yourself to us. And finally, the preview outlines the main points that come in the body. So I'll give you an example of a thesis and a preview put together for the brown bag speech. Hi, my name is Andy Pruitt, and today I would like to help you get to know me a little bit better through the use of 3 objects that describe my past, present, and future. So, simple as that. I let you know my name, that you're going to know me better, and then I preview my 3 main points, past, present, and future. Do be sure to include a thorough preview. Don't skip over that part, even though it seems pretty self-explanatory. We're all doing the same speech right now. It's to get these elements ingrained in you so that when the speeches get harder and more complex, you're already used to things like previews and summaries. Which now brings us to the conclusion. Once you're finished with the introduction, head to the conclusion and you'll write a summary, which mirrors the preview. Essentially, you're letting us know, today I hope you learned a bit more about me by looking at objects from my past, present, and future. So again, it can be very simply worded. Follow that up with a creative closing. This is similar to an attention getter in that it gets us thinking about something, it's engaging, it can be fun, it can be dramatic. Often it loops back to what you said in the hook. Doesn't always have to, but that can make it feel like you come full circle, essentially. And there you go. Put that all together is the structure that you'll want to be looking for this brown bag speech. All of these elements are worth points. So if, say, you forgot to open with an attention getter, that could be -1 or 2 points. If you miss a summary or a preview, that's a -1 point for each one of those. So just be sure that when you practice, you're checking off those boxes. You've got these structural elements.